Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome back to Adobe Live. It's a very foggy day in London, and I'm not entirely sure what the why have I got double audio coming out of my ears? Sorry about that. I'm not entirely sure how the temperature is outside, but I know it's freezing cold in here, so I'm here with my hot water bottle, heating on and everything. Tigz, how are you doing?
I'm good. Yeah, it is. Well, I'm up in Hertfordshire, so a little bit further out. But yeah, it's equally foggy here. And I'm not gonna lie, there are blankets everywhere in my
Yeah.
studio right now.
So I would take that as a hint that there are probably plenty of people all cozy inside and hopefully watching the stream. So welcome if you are. I can see in the chat there's quite a few people already joining in. So just going to give you a moment to say hello and let us know where you're from. For those who are there, hello to Gareth, Anika, Emma, Sandrine, Oliver, Sean, and Jack, and scrolling up, and Doris, and welcome everyone. Welcome to the chat. If you want to join in, we are chatting on behance.net, and you can go over to behance.net/live, and you'll see the live stream tabs. We are the one that is active. If you're currently watching on YouTube, that's cool. I'm going to do my best to try and monitor the chat there, but Behance is where most of our chat is happening. Yeah, it's good to see you all. I can see in the chat Emma saying Joe is home. Can you believe it? Well, yes, I've spent the last 3 months or so in Japan and finally back in London. So it's good to know that all of this tech still works. I've got a new microphone, so seeing how that goes. And this week's streams, so we've got, what day is it today? Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. We've got 90 minutes each day. Tigz and myself, we'll be going through a whole host of Japan stuff. So today, Tigz, you've got the control. I will be your host. What are we going through today?
Oh, well, thanks for having me. Today, I thought I'd start with some of my geisha photos. So we were actually in Japan around the same time. I wasn't out as long as you were. I was sort of like the middle chunk.
Right.
But yeah, so traveling around mostly central and a bit of northern main island as well. But one of the things that I was most excited about on that trip was my geisha travels. So I spent some time in the Gion district of Kyoto, and I thought I'd share some of my photos today, and we'd have a look at what I got during that trip, and have a look at maybe editing some of them as well.
Amazing. I'm wondering actually how many people have maybe been to Japan and how many have maybe been to Kyoto and these areas. There was a time when it was the most visited city for tourism, I believe. That has all changed, but yeah, it's a beautiful area. Love it.
Yeah, it was because the last time I was out there was it was cherry blossom season 2019, and it was rammed. Like it was impossible to walk up streets, and I remember going through the Gion district and like really like it was a struggle to sort of get through the crowds there.
Yeah,
we were quite lucky that like my husband and I, when we booked this trip to go, we took a punt on whether or not the borders would be open
all right.
this December to go. So when we were out there, I mean, it was there was no one. I couldn't believe how empty the streets
Wow.
are, which I guess we'll see in the photos as well. It looks completely completely different from how I remember it a few years back. But yeah, how was it for you as well? Did you find it quite quiet in some of the areas you were going? Because you got out
Yeah,
there earlier, November.
I was
right?
there October, October until end of January. Yeah, there was definitely parts that were quieter. In many ways, it's kind of like is it an oxymoron, the term for this? It was like, in many ways, everything was exactly the same. It was all just how I remembered it. But then in many other ways, it was wildly different. And it was like, where did these new buildings come from? Where did this happen? So it was like, it was the same sort of feeling at times, but I found myself just noticing new things. In some ways, it was almost like having a culture shock again. It was like going back to the very first time I went to Japan. You're like, whoa, like I've not experienced this before in my life. And now it came to a point because the borders have been closed for 3 years. I was like, I've not had this for 3 years, and I've just been dreaming about it every day. So,
Yeah.
yeah, just just all the sort of feelings and emotions, and just kind of taking the time to, I guess, just have it at a casual pace, which was great.
Yeah, definitely. But yeah, so I've split things out. There's a whole range of things. There's some snow monkeys that I've got sort of hidden away in some folders here in my Lightroom catalog. There's some bits of Takayama, Tokyo. But yeah, I thought we'd start with the Geisha and see where we went. So
Takayama
yeah.
is my favorite city other than Tokyo in Japan. I
Oh,
love it.
it's
It's
amazing.
just all the wood, everything. It's true like timber craftsman land. It's yeah, I love it.
Yeah, I believe for those of you who are interested in Japanese like the history of Japan, I believe Takayama it's a specialist in woodcraft, and I think someone was telling me that instead at points in their history of the city, instead of paying the taxes that you would as a city, they used to send craftsmen from Takayama around the country to go and build these incredible buildings around Japan as sort of like
Oh wow.
in lieu of having to pay in lieu of having to pay these taxes. So yeah, the
Huh.
woodcraft and the buildings there. I mean, if you love the let me just bring up a couple of these images. If you love this sort of like all the wood and like the house fronts, it's very, very similar in Takayama as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, plus the street food is great. So
Yeah. Definitely. The thing I distinctly remember with Takayama and all the wood is the drains. So running along the sides of the streets, they've got
yes.
wooden slats rather than like elsewhere in Japan, it's maybe concrete or sometimes iron.
Hmm.
But they're all wooden, and it's like these mini little sets of decking. Obviously, all perfectly maintained and well kept. But yeah, Takayama,
Yeah.
what a great little city.
I don't know if I've got oh they can sort of see them covered on this side. But you can see um like literally the drains running down the
Yeah.
sides of the road. It's very easy to fall in as well if you're not looking looking where you're going. But I'll see if I can find them. One of my projects while I was in Japan, I fell in love with all the manhole covers.
Hmm.
So this is one from Matsumoto that they had out, but you can actually get like a bingo card of all of the drain covers and go around and
Yeah.
like tick them off your list. A
They've even
story
got
for another
Pokemon
day.
ones.
Yes, they do.
Yeah.
But anyway, back to the geisha. I guess this has been one of my dreams for a really long time, being able to photograph geisha. I've been obsessed with geisha culture since I was a kid. Um, just everything about their entire way of being and the culture and how educated these women are. Um, so it was a real dream come true, and um, I was determined that I was going to be able to actually speak some of the language so that I could direct this shoot in Japanese.
Nice.
I've been learning for the last couple of years to try and make that happen. I'm not gonna lie, there were some significant gaps in in my vocabulary. I had the lovely Peter McIntosh, who helped organise this experience for me out in Kyoto. So he was filling in one of like the gaps in my vocabulary for me. With Kahatsu, who is the Maiko here that I shot with. And one of the words that I had to use quite often was gyaku, which means opposite. So not like switch legs or switch hands or turn around.
Right.
So that was my word of the shoot, gyaku. But yeah, so I have put all of the photos that I took. There's apparently 201. So these were shot over sort of like an hour and a half period. And to give you an idea of how quiet Kyoto, especially the Gion district, is right now, you can see one person sort of in that background, sort of walking
Hmm.
away. But yeah, we saw maybe like one person at a time. So it was literally unheard of to be able to do a shoot in the streets of Gion. The bits you can photograph in, because a
In the
lot of
middle
it
of the
now
day as
has
well.
in the middle of the day. This was about 12 midday.
Yeah.
So yeah, literally unheard of to be able to do this a few years back. But yeah, so this is everything that I shot, and I thought we'd go through and literally from start to edit of how I would work through this.
Yeah.
Full transparency, I actually haven't had time since I got back to go through these properly. I think one of them's made it to my Instagram feed. So what you're seeing now is literally the thought process of how this will go down.
I love that, because then that means we've got some genuine questions. So if anyone has any questions about the workflow and process, then drop them in the chat. Likewise, I actually want to just ask a little bit on your background on how you got to this. So we haven't really introduced your style of work and what brings you to this. Yeah.
Yeah. So I've been a photographer now. This is my 14th year officially, although I've had a camera for as long as I remember. I have a background in illustration and graphics. So that's what my degree was in, and came out sort of like towards the end of my third year. I was like, oh, don't think I enjoy illustration anymore. I needed something to get me through my degree. Picked up a camera because I was like, well, that's two-dimensional. We can make that illustration-y. It's fine. So for my third year, I was working on photographing people. And I remember specifically saying at that time, like, oh, photographing people is such hard work. I'm never going to do this. Like, it's literally just getting me through. Turns out, actually, I had a bit of a knack for it.
Yep.
I was photographing my friends and some of my work colleagues at the time for my part-time job in a makeshift cupboard. It had literally, there were no windows in there. We had a bed sheet, we had a tungsten lamp, like literally just your generic yellow light bulb.
Yeah.
And that was it. We're shooting in there, creating content. I was working on my final major project was called Wonderland, and it was sort of an Alice versus Narcotics Anonymous, and the idea that there's a hole in the soul. So it was sort of like an adult version of Alice in Wonderland.
Right.
And just started photographing people, loved it in the end. People kept asking me, oh, could we do a bit more of this? And I ended up getting into the burlesque world. So put my name down for some photography jobs, got asked to cover the press day of London Burlesque Festival, and met some incredible humans that day. So spent the next 10 years photographing burlesque, which is what that book is. So
nice.
I traveled the world photographing burlesquers from Burlesque Hall of Fame and Miss Exotic Worlds all across Europe, performed a little bit myself, a very, very short period of time.
You just say the collective name was Burlesca?
Burlesquers, yeah.
Burlesquers. Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that sounds like a dessert. It's like, oh, I'll have the burlesca, please.
Oh, it does sound tasty, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And so did that for a while, and people started saying to me, hey, like, I don't perform, but I love the way that you shoot and empower other humans and sort of help them feel more confident in their body. Could you do that for me? And that's how I sort of drifted into the boudoir world. It was amazing. And then sort of more towards 2020, especially with lockdown and a lot of the work I did, because it was B2C, I couldn't do a lot of that stuff. I had to work with more businesses. So then people then started saying to me, hey, I love the empowerment work you're doing with boudoir. I want to feel like that, but I want to feel it in my business self, my business persona. And so I rebranded last year as an empowerment photographer that specializes in helping people be more visible and showing their why. The Geisha side of things, again, because this female empowerment has been such a huge part of my upbringing, but also the work that I've done over the years. It's always been a dream to go out there and do something, get involved somehow with Geisha culture. So went out last in 2019 and did some experiences and sort of like banquets and dinners and things, just to experience what it was like to be in the presence of Geisha. And this time it was like I would love to take the photos. So it's been a 13-14 year journey to get to this point where like I'm actually yeah, realizing that dream. So like I'm smiling a lot because it's like for me it's a really big deal. So
Yeah, and you're seeing your images for the first time as well. So
yes,
this is
I mean I travel with I have Lightroom mobile
mhm,
on my phone, so I sort of can bring things through. My camera has Wi-Fi, so I can bring the raw files through and edit
okay.
one or two on the go. But mostly, I'm a bit of a control freak when it comes to
Hmm.
color, so I like editing in, you know, in a controlled space,
Yeah,
hence the amount of white. Um,
yeah,
so yeah, so this is me actually being able to do it properly for the first time.
cool.
So yeah.
We've actually got a question here from Sean asking, how did you find the model? That's, I guess, first part. And then is there any payment involved, or is it, what's the process there?
Oh, so yeah, so I paid for this shoot to happen. It was definitely me paying her, not sort of the other way
Yeah.
around. Um, I think the biggest thing was the language barrier. So Kahatsu, who is the Maiko that I photographed, speaks only Japanese
Right.
in a Kyoto dialect. And I've learned Japanese in a Tokyo dialect, which
Right.
mostly there's the odd word is a bit
Hmm.
different, so the vocabulary is there. So I think one of the big things was the language barrier, also being really respectful of culture as well. So some of the like kimonos that they wear can be sort of like in the 30,000 region in terms of cost. So there's respecting the clothes, respecting the culture, respecting the way that they can stand. So, for example, you'll see in a lot of the photos that Kahatsu is holding up the kimono, and that hand has to be there. So we're sort of working around sort of how
Right.
Kahatsu can pose within the sort of within the dress and and sort of the culture of geisha. You know, like there's a reason that they're admired and respected so much.
Mm.
So yeah, working around that as well. So the only thing that I had asked was, please, could we not have a green kimono? Because I have a bit of aversion to the color green. But other than that, she had full control over how she turned up, what she was dressed in, and obviously being very respectful of how I asked her to pose. So
Yep.
very different to how I might work. I mean, you know, it's always respectful, but at the same time, like I know that with my normal clients, I have a bit more freedom over how to pose, but I
Hmm.
also didn't want to cross any cultural
Yeah.
like boundaries as well. So yeah, it was a
I
really
guess
wonderful experience.
in that sense, the experience transitions more to like documentary style photography, where the scene in the event is happening and you're just capturing it, rather than you're not structuring it too direct. You're obviously choosing angles and directions of maybe like, oh, can we face this way? Can we face that way? But you're letting it naturally evolve in front. Just a slight shift,
That's
I
a
guess. Yeah.
perfect way of perfectly put. I would say that normally I'd be a bit more involved in the poses, but yeah, definitely a shift into the documentary style,
Mm.
which I think is a bit of a learning curve for me because I I guess I don't really photograph people in that sort of
Mm.
observing way. So yeah, I could pick the locations, and if something wasn't working, I'd say, you know, can we move on? And we'd sort of walk a bit further down the street or find a little nook or whatever. But yeah, there was very little in terms of posing. Like I might say, look, can we look in this direction? Can you change your feet, sort of gyaku
Yeah.
alternate, or could you turn the other way? But other than that, and she has the bag, and we also have I can't remember the official name for them, but like a parasol as well. There were two that were sort of switched out through the day. But yeah, it was very much documentary style
Yeah.
rather than like getting stuck in and sort of saying, please do this pose, please do that pose. So
Yeah.
Luckily she is absolutely stunning and has great poise, and so didn't need anything really from me. So it was a real joy and nice to be pushed out of my comfort zone as well.
Yeah, definitely. All right, let's jump to Lightroom and see how you go about this. I can see that you've
Yeah.
rated some of your images already.
Yes, I
Uh,
went and did a quick run through this morning just to see what was in here. Just so there were no surprises for me. But the first thing that I would do is always go through and rate some of my images. Um, I start with a blank 0 on everything because I find it easier to add in the images that I want to keep rather than reverse cull. It just, for me, it just streamlines that process. So I do that by using the 0 and 3-star ratings. So if you're using a keyboard, obviously literally 0 and 3. I had some surgery on my wrist a couple of years ago. So actually I have a Zenth Labs quick
oh,
keys,
cool.
and it's a remote. So if you see, I've got like the 0, 3. I've also
Yeah.
got 4 and 5 on there. But yeah, I can just sit at my screen and press the keys for when I
Nice.
want. So
And you
um,
can take that with you as well. So if you had a
yeah, and
laptop
literally
and
just
yeah.
yeah, so it's really great. You plug it into the TV as well. So if you are doing client viewings, or sort of corporate, if you're working with a client and want them to see work, you can go through it, or even, in the case of the boudoir stuff, give them the remote so they can do it themselves. But yeah,
Ah,
start going through and looking for what I want in the images. So this one, for example, the eyes are quite close in this image, so I'm just going to skip past that one. There's some really nice lighting in the background of this one, but the lighting's not great on the face at the same time, so probably go past this. Yeah, just sort of looking for things that are catching my eye in this as well, and a little bit of composition work. Uh, I can see that there's a lot of the sides to the right of the image. There's quite a lot of distortion there as well, so it's sort of things to bear in mind when I'm going through.
mm,
I don't know about you, because you shoot a lot of buildings, and
yep.
like, do you have the same OCD on straight lines?
Yeah, so perspective is probably my first thing that I want to adjust when it comes to a
Yep,
photo. Like
same.
wonky horizons and yeah, distorted. It's one of the reasons that I really kind of don't like wide angle lenses. And for a long time, I was very vocal about saying how much I hated wide angle lenses, and then I just came to a realization. I was like, you know what? I don't think I necessarily hate wide angle lenses. I just hate when they're used wrong. And so
Yeah,
then that just told me is that if I want to get on board with wide angle lenses, I need to find my comfort in how best to use them. Unfortunately, I see a lot of posts on Instagram that are ultra wide angle lenses, and they are not used in their best way. Looking all up at
yeah,
things. That can be a look, but you can tell when things are intentional and when things are just kind of happening.
yeah.
So yeah, I like my straight lines, and yeah, just using things
Yeah.
correct.
Yeah, it's for me, like, you'll notice that as soon as I get into like the actual editing, one of the first things I'm
Yeah,
going to do is straighten up these buildings.
yeah,
Because on the subject of lenses, because we're talking about it anyway, I shoot with I've got a 40 mil. It's a Hasselblad though, so it's the equivalent of like a 35.
nice.
So I've got that, and then I've got a 90, which is again sort of a bit lower, so it's like 70, 75, 80-ish
Yeah,
mil. So they're the two that I use, but predominantly I'm shooting with that 40 mil. So yeah, like a 35 mil equivalent.
which Hasselblad are you using?
The X1D2.
X1D2. Nice.
Yeah. So yeah, so that's what these ones are shot on today. So yeah, so these ones, I believe this is I want to say it's a 40 on this one. I can have a look at the data in a bit.
I think it says 90
on
at the
there.
top. Is that 90?
Oh no, there you go. Yeah, it does say 90. Well done.
Yeah. I had to
So yeah,
squint
so
there.
these are
It's far away.
so we've got going through a couple more of these. Again, we can see that I've got that person in the background, so I could look at maybe seeing if I can get that person out of shot. Maybe I want to leave them in there, but something to consider when I'm going through and editing this as well. The other thing I'm aware of is we've got some marks on the floor as well, sort of drawing the eye in. So that's something that I'll want to look at in post there as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, sort of just working through. This one
Sean's
came up.
asking actually, is this all natural light?
Yeah,
Are you using
this
any
is
reflectors
100%
or anything?
natural light.
Yeah.
No reflectors. I literally packed a camera, a lens,
And a toothbrush.
pretty much. I did have the other thing I had with me. I think you've got one of these as well. The DJI Pocket 2. So for some video work, although I didn't have that one actually out on the day. But yeah, that's pretty much all the kit I went with for I didn't travel with any lights at all. Got some interesting light leak stuff coming through, some underexposed. Generally, I find that I shoot about a third to 2/3 under normally, because I like to preserve the skin tones, and it's easier for me when I'm editing to raise the exposure and then make sure I've got that detail.
Yeah, I found with a Hasselblad, so I shot with the X1D2 a couple of years back. Actually, was it the second model? It might have just been the X1D. And the shadow detail, like I swear I could take a picture with the lens cap on and it would still capture the scene. Like it, you could pull so much up from it. I was amazed, but I think it's is it 16-bit depth images? I want to say, I'm not 100% sure.
I feel like that's something I should know, and I don't. We can find out. Come back tomorrow. We'll have the answer.
Yeah, it's got such good shadow control. Yeah, beautiful images to pull around.
Yeah. Do you know, like, I mean, I shoot outdoors relatively often anyway, but because of the dark wood and the brightness of the brightness of the day as well, I do find like there's a real shift as well. Like I'd say I probably struggle with the light just a little bit this day, purely because of how dark the wood is, and the sort of walkways, the roads, sort of the back alleys and stuff, they're so narrow as well. There's such a stark contrast between the sky and the buildings. I'm pretty sure the clouds are going in and out with this hard light. So yes, this one's gorgeous. Unfortunately, I missed that one. That one's not sharp. So yeah, shame about that one. But yeah, very blue light as well. Looking through some of these. But yeah, but like I've included everything because I think it's really important to show that we all have the shots that we miss as well.
Yeah, definitely.
I actually love this shot, but it's out of focus.
Yeah.
So there's another one that's more in focus, so I can add that one. But yeah, so when I was talking about the alternate, like the Gaku, like the alternate, one of the things is the feet. So if we have a look at this image, for example, we've got the feet very much in a stationary position. And I was asking her to take a step forward and sort of like rock slightly backwards and forwards to get this like feel of movement, even though she's somewhat stationary in there as well.
Yeah, it's such a subtle difference, but makes a big difference. Especially also just between, I think it was about 4 images back, there's a lamp in the background that you cropped off where the feet are together, and then you've recomposed and you've just included that light, which just kind of adds a little bit more depth to it.
Yeah, and I especially when you're shooting humans, any type of human, moving around and like especially trying to get different angles. The other thing, I always say this when I'm telling people about like when you're posing models for photographs, is making sure that you have a constant dialogue going back and forth between you. So as photographers, we can be so caught on looking at the backs of our cameras, or like what settings have we got, and this is wrong, or this isn't looking right. So when we're like staring at the backs of our cameras going, okay, call it massive concentration face, trying to make sure that they know that it's nothing to do with their pose or like whatever, that actually it's sort of what's going on around. So trying to do that in a foreign language also, there was a lot going on in my brain that day. Do
you have any other particular workflows? So I'm just thinking, there was a photographer I met a couple of months back who does like portraiture, and he was actually doing like a workshop on portraiture. And there was one particular tip that stood out to me so much, because I'm not comfortable doing portraiture. It's probably my least favorite photography, so I always want to learn with it. And he was saying, start off tight. So maybe with like a slightly longer lens, a little bit of distance between you and the person, but crop off anything below the elbow. So that way, people are always awkward with their hands. They never know what to do with their hands, and they're like, I don't know what to do. So let it be known to them. It's like your hands aren't involved. And so then they can just relax their hands. They can, do whatever. And then it's just relaxing their face. And then you come out wider And by this point, they're relaxed between the interaction with you and them, that allows a more natural image to come from it. And that tip stood out to me so much. I was like, oh, wow. I feel that myself when I'm having my photo taken. I don't know what to do with my hands. So just tell me that they've gone.
Yeah, it takes the average person about 20 minutes to warm up into a photo shoot. Obviously, that can be a bit shorter if they're used to being in front of the camera, but especially if it's someone that you don't particularly know, or you don't have a rapport with them, that maybe they're just super nervous. But generally speaking, everyone takes 20 minutes. So I always tell people to start off, if there's going to be an outfit change, I always say, put on the outfit you like the least for the first 20 minutes. We'll just have some fun, put some music on, laugh, relax, tell some jokes.
Yeah.
So then it doesn't matter. So just think of these as just the warm up. And then the second outfit I always have as I'm like, put your favorite outfit on. And there's this shift, like
right.
just over that image, like even if it's just like you're taking off a jumper or putting on a different shirt, or maybe it's a complete outfit change. But that transition just really warms people up. It's like, oh, like I feel really good now, like I've got my favorite outfit on. And so normally I find that the next 20 minutes after that is when you're going to get the best content. So for that first
we shall
one,
see. This is my favorite hoodie and I've been living in
20
this.
minutes.
Yep.
But yeah, so normally for the first 20 minutes, I'm sort of, it's also very heavily guided. So I try and take people away from feeling awkward by giving them poses that I know will work on all or most body types.
Right.
So I'll give them other things to think about. And especially with them, if I'm doing boudoir posing, for example, I've got like, I'm like, try this because I'm noticing on you. And they're thinking about everything else that they sort of forget about the hands thing. But yeah, like I think that no one ever knows what to do with their hands. So guiding that. But my favorite thing in portrait photography is not the poses, but it's the moments between the poses, because you tell someone to get into a pose and they're thinking about that, and all they can think about is that and how awkward it feels and everything else. And then you say, okay, relax, and then they'll do something naturally with their body and move so fluidly or look in the perfect place, and they're the photos that I'm capturing. So it's the moments between the poses, when I catch the like serene face or just sort of the naturalness of what it is to be human. So yeah, the moments between the poses are the ones to definitely watch out for. So yeah, so there's loads of images in here. I'm probably not going to go through all of them because I think we're only really sort of like a quarter of the way through. But what I can do is just show you sort of some of the variety that I got over this shoot as a whole. So this is when we moved into more of a garden area, trying to get little hints of outdoors. I mean, it's winter, so we don't have necessarily the lushness of nature that we would have at different times of the year. And it hadn't snowed. Actually, I don't think it did snow in Tokyo at all this winter, or not yet anyway. I think
last week it did. Yeah.
Did it? Oh, they finally
it was like snow. 2 days after I left, which I was actually kind of grateful for, because when it snows in Tokyo, it's kind of the same as London. They're not prepared for it, so everything shuts down. They're like, oh, what do we do? Whereas the rest of Japan gets mountains of snow, and they know how to deal with it, but Tokyo doesn't. And so it can become quite chaotic, and I was worried about missing a flight and then missing my next project. And
because it did it snowed in Kanazawa. We were up there for Christmas, and I mean they're pretty well prepared for snow. So they have they have those water jets in the street that sort of like sprout water out, and it melts the snow in the roads.
I still want to look into that, because the first time I saw that, my immediate thought was, hold on a minute, this is just going to freeze. That doesn't seem like a good idea if you're just putting water onto a surface. But clearly it works, because it's everywhere, and they'll run the streets like, I don't know, 2 hours or so in the morning of just water, and then throughout the day just rinse it away. And I'm like, Okay. Maybe there's something in the water that is like an antifreeze, or
I mean, same. Like I
yeah.
still I haven't managed to fathom how this system works,
Because
but
I wondered if it was some of the like volcanic water, like the same water that ends up in the onsen. But I touched it and
maybe.
it's cold. It's not hot.
Oh,
So yeah.
but yeah. So I mean, they're set up for snow, but they had more snow than they were expecting while I was up
Mm,
there, and they did shut the. I think the airport was shut. Some of the
hmm.
trains stopped running. So yeah, like even when they are prepared for it, like I mean, there's huge amounts of snow. I was up in the Iwate prefecture. So if you think of like, hang on, that way, yeah,
Yep.
North Island. I'm
Yep.
trying to work out if I'm mirrored.
No, you got it right. Yep.
So in the top part of the middle, like up, you got Sendai, and then we went up even further to, gosh,
Morioka.
where we like Kyoto, like
Okay.
with the onsen region up in the mountain. And the snow, like we were sort of going up in a coach, and the snow was up sort of this high at points. So yeah, they can deal with loads of snow.
Yeah.
I wanted to go out for a walk in the snow, and they were like, "But there's bears." Like, okay, maybe I won't leave then. So yeah, so moving on, just showing like sort of a different scenario setup that came across.
Sandrine's
So
asking
yeah,
maybe there was
just walking
salt
around.
in the water. So I didn't taste the water to give it a test. Yeah, I'm not really fond of road cocktails, but could have seen.
It very well could be salt.
Yeah, didn't have any pH tests with me either, so not that I'd ever have them, but you know what I mean.
It'd be one of those mysteries. I have to Google that one. Be all the things you ever wanted to know about Japan roads and drains and manhole covers.
So I'm glad you mentioned it actually, because so I did film like a very wintry series that I've yet to edit, and I filmed this on the roads. I was like, I'm giving myself a reminder when I come to edit. I was like, Google how this doesn't freeze. So I'm going to do it now.
Perfect. If you can do that and then answer it for both of us, that would be very appreciated. So yeah, so that's it. I've just sort of, if you've been watching on the screen, I've just sort of gone through what was left in the rest of this. So thankfully I did go through and favorite a few of these earlier. So this is what I ended up with of 3 stars. So out of the 201, I got it down to 76. And then I start looking, as we said, for like in the finer details and start comparing specific ones. So I normally pick up everything in the same scene, look at them together and decide, which one I love the most. So in this case, this one, and I've pressed 9, which is a shortcut for a blue color label. So it's another way of just picking things out. Depending on how many files you have, and if you want to do like a first or second pass at culling as well, having a folder system can be really useful as well. So highlighting everything that I've got in that selection. You can see I've got Kahatsu Kyoto here, and then I can add a subfolder. I'm going to name that Kahatsu again, just so that's in this folder here. The reason that I've done that is because I have an export that takes the folder name and then applies it into the file name at the end. So it helps me find them, especially when if you are a travel, probably for you the same, Joe. There have been times when someone has asked me for files, or like a commission has come in, and I need to have a really good file system because I might not be with my RAID drive to get those files off last minute. So I need to be able to say, normally to my husband, okay, you need to go to 2022, this client name, this folder, and the file will be called blah. So I've got that all built in there as well.
Nice.
So I've gone through, and then I will pick out the ones that I like the most. And again, I did this literally 10 minutes before the session, picked out ones that I thought maybe I could work on during the stream. I'm going to go through some of my edit section now. But again, if anyone has questions, they want to pop up and ask anything about that, please feel free.
So I've just done a little Google on the roads and the sprinklers. Apparently, it is warm water, so it could be that
It is?
where I was, it was so cold that the water became cold by the time it reached out. But I guess I don't know how deep the pipes are, but it could be that the pipes are very surface level, so it could be that that helps warm the road as well. And then as it eventually sprinkles out, then it cools down almost immediately. But can't find any reason of why it's not freezing afterwards. Maybe it's just because it's continuously moving. Or maybe in certain extreme weather, they just don't use it and they're like, yeah, this is causing more damage than good. I don't know.
They just do some things just so well. So well. Oh, such an amazing country. Right, so I've picked a photo for us to do some work on. And I picked this one specifically because we can do a little bit of work on sort of exposure correction. But one of the things that you'll notice, especially like as I've moved in and out of these alleys, is there's some real mix between sort of like yellow light and blue light in here. So sort of balancing this out a little bit as well. I'm going to come into my develop module. Let's make that image. There we go. Perfect. So yeah, so exactly the same as you. The first thing I'm always in is the transform mode. I always have a look at auto and vertical beforehand to see which one fits better. More often than not, I'm coming in with the actual guides and lining those up just to make sure. I'm more picky about my vertical lines than I am about the horizontal ones, but I think that's
same.
Like, yeah. So I'm pretty much always working on those.
The way I think of it is vertical lines. When you see them, they feel like something's unsafe, like it's gonna fall down, or it's like it's something structurally doesn't look right. Whereas horizontal lines, they feel more emotive, especially when you've got a person in there. Like you can maybe make someone look a bit more relaxed, where you've angled it to them for how they're feeling. It's almost like the difference between like a white balance versus an ambient white balance. It's like you're respecting that the light itself isn't white, and so let's not try and change it. Let's just honor the fact that it's got an amber glow to it. That's my artistic reasoning for horizontal versus vertical
reasoning. I don't know that I've ever put thought into it, but I'm gonna have to think about why my verticals mean more to me now. But yeah, the other thing, especially like I find with verticals, it tends to be more tolerant of people as well, so you don't end up with really distorted humans. But then you've got I always find with horizontals, you have to be really careful because they can really distort bodies. So yeah, I think there's probably maybe like the logical reason why I tend not to, but yeah. So I've straightened those up, and then I'm going to brighten this up just a touch. I am hovering, for those of you who aren't familiar with Lightroom, if you hover over the numbers at the end, you can use the up and down keys or shift up and shift down to go in larger chunks as well. Nice. So I find that's a much easier way than using the sliders. I always find I can't get quite the same precision that I want from using those. And another quick tip, if you ever change your mind, you can always double tap on the name and it will reset those back. So I'm going to bring that up just a fraction there. I'm really conscious that because of her makeup, I don't want to go too far into the top of my histogram. Sort of making sure that I don't have anything too far into the depths of the black, but also nothing that's sort of coming off the top of the histogram either. So that's probably about right. Maybe a little bit higher. No, put that back down. And then I'm going to work a touch on the white balance. So you can see here, it's actually really mixed in the histogram. We've got these big chunks of yellow, I always think if everything sort of sits in the gray on this histogram, then it tends to be quite well white balanced. But you
Mhm.
can see that we've got a lot of yellow shift here, but actually in places we also have some blue shift because we have this sort of half yellow, half blue image.
Mm.
So I actually like the warmth of this. I'm maybe gonna take a touch of the green out of that wall, but only slightly. Um, but I really want to do something about this blue tinge this side.
Mm.
So before I get too deep into anything, I'm gonna grab my linear gradient and I'm gonna drag that across here. If I hold down the shift key, that'll lock into place as well, just so I'm making sure that I've got a solid vertical. So
You
that's
said this
showing you where
was
that's applied.
around midday, this image.
Yeah, this was, I'm trying to think. It would have been somewhere around 12:30 at this point
Mm.
in the day.
It's just interesting because, that is like prime time for the sun, but it kind of looks like a morning shot, like especially that blue sort of cast.
Yeah,
Like whenever this happens in photos, I actually get a little bit frustrated because I was like, I don't understand why. I don't know why this light is coming through blue. It doesn't make sense, but it just is. And maybe it's reflected off something. Maybe I don't know. It's just something about it that always confuses me. And as you are as well, I want to remove it.
yeah,
Get rid of the blue.
yeah. That's, my speaker's saying a bit weird. I think it had something to do with because of the height of the buildings and because of the hard shadow. So that this was taken, if you think of a crossroads like this, where my watch is, was basically where this shot was taken. So there was
Right.
a break in the building next to me that allowed more of the, maybe because of the direction of the light, allowed that in. But it was a very, very narrow street going down into that sort of the back of the image. So potentially it's that, maybe it's shadow light, because I mean the buildings, they can be quite tall and very close together. So yeah, it's very different light. And also, if for those of you who do travel around and take photos, every country seems to have its own level of white balance as well. So I
Yes.
often find I always work with like manual white balance. So in the UK, I'm normally around 5,000 Kelvin.
Hmm.
And if I'm shooting sort of around the US, it's normally higher. It's like 6.5, 7. And in Japan, I found it was like a little bit the other way. Like it was a bit more
Yep.
sort of like 4,
4,000.
4.5.
Yep.
Yeah. So
I'm so glad you mentioned that because this Japan trip in particular myself, I was doing a lot more fixed white balance. So typically I would do auto white balance a lot of the time and just, run and gun on a lot of things. But I've actually been embracing shooting JPEG a lot lately. And just doing very minimal edits to things. And so one of the key factors is getting your white balance correct.
mhm.
So it's been like a good sort of technical practice for myself. And I've also applied that into video. I've been doing a lot of intentionally shifting my white balance to a little bit more of an extreme. So maybe intentionally cooling things down or warming things up. And yeah, I did find that around 4,500 set on my camera was working wonders. And then when I came back here and I used the camera, I was like, this looks awful. What am I doing
Yeah.
here? And yeah, I'd never quite pieced it together that, yeah, certain countries have certain white balance values. And it's so like, it's commonly known of like Hollywood light, and like California's sun is known as like being different. But I don't think people really understand and appreciate just how different the sun is in Japan. And I talk about it so much. The light is just different. It's just different.
Yeah. That phrase comes out of my mouth a lot. And actually, on the subject of, I did catch your latest vlog on, like, especially with you were saying you were shooting JPEG because you were taking the little Fuji round as your social cam, which is actually my social. I have the X100T, so
Nice.
exactly the same. Like I'm shooting RAW, but it's the JPEGs that I'm literally transferring out onto my phone, ready to go up. So yeah, having to make sure that white balance is right at the time, because once it's in JPEG form, there's not really a huge amount that you can do with it at that point. So
yeah,
I could geek out about color all day.
Yeah.
But yeah, back to my all these geek conversations that we're having. I'm absolutely loving it. So I've got my linear gradient here. I've not done anything with the exposure yet. I'm just going to leave it as it is. Turn off that show overlay so we can see exactly what we're working with. And I'm going to use the color, so temperature in here to start warming that up. I'd say it's too high. Maybe here, put the exposure up a touch as well. I want there to still be some depth. Like I still want it to have that shadow, but I think it was just a touch too dark there before. So yeah, so if we bring that up a little bit, pop in a small amount of yellow.
Don't know if there's been an update or if it's customizable, but I'm sure that on mine, when I create a mask or something, the color is the first tab. Or rather, it's above the tone, but your tone controls. Can you drag and move that box around? Like the whole module for color? No?
Nope. Or maybe it is.
Interesting.
I think I'm up to date. I did actually check this morning. Nope. Or maybe
okay. Well,
do you know, or maybe it could be that I decided to do I did all my updates before I went away, and I was like, yep, we can do them all now.
Yep.
So it might be that maybe sometimes, especially with Photoshop, I can sometimes be one behind, just in case, like because I have a few plugins and things that I want to give them time to catch up and like make the fixes they need so that they'll work with the new version. So yeah, I'm often like a couple of weeks behind.
Myself now, and it's not. It's exactly the same as yours. So I don't know where my mind's playing tricks. I must be thinking of just the main develop module, in which case the color is above the tone. Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, so if I've lifted that up, this might be able to come and get some more blue out of this in a second as well. Actually, there's a really great feature in here as well. If you control click on your panels, if you go into solo mode, then whichever one you open, it automatically closes everything else for you as well. So it's a really neat way of making sure you've only got the bits that you need rather than having everything open and scrolling down. So yeah, that's one of my favorite features in the panel. Just going to remove some. Oh, were you going to say something?
I was just going to say, I've just noticed Tony has joined the chat. And
Hi,
appreciating the geekiness level, talking about light and Japan and color, and yeah. We've also got there's another question in here that was asked a little bit earlier. Now is maybe a good time to mention is how is communicating with Japanese people whilst in Japan? So from my part, I've maybe got a bit of a inside edge because my partner's Japanese, so going around is helpful and spending a lot of time with family. But for you, how has it been? I mean, you mentioned that with this you had a translator, but wasn't like an official translator. Is that right?
Yeah. So Peter was with us for this shoot only. So he has been. I think he's been in Kyoto for like 20. I think he said 20 years. So he's fluent. Like, super fluent. And in both English and Japanese. So if there were things that I didn't know how to say, he could definitely fill in the gaps. When I went in 2019, I didn't know any language. I mean, I had like arigato, probably it, to be fair. Had enough to say please, thank you, and please can I have the bill? And so this time, my lockdown project was actually to learn Japanese, because one day I would love to actually move out there and live there. So took Japanese lessons. Basically it was 2.5 hours sort of lessons a week, and then did I did fast track for a while, so I was doing 5 hours a week. So I haven't sat the exam because you can only sit the exam twice a year, and it's especially because there weren't any exams in lockdown. There's a massive waiting list for it. But I'm about lower intermediate level, so should be able to pass the GCSE equivalent as long as I put some practice in. Yeah. But I have enough to sort of ask for directions, tell people about because me and my husband both have allergies, so I can discuss like food ingredients, allergies, that kind of thing. Give basic directions. So, for example, like "koko e mite kudasai" means please look here. So I have bits, but I find that even just having small amounts of language opens up so many doors, because at least you're trying. And I think we all know that if someone sort of puts a little bit of effort in, we're like, yes, like, come on. So it definitely opened doors like hugely for us on the trip, and being able to eat in certain places that we couldn't have done before, or have conversations with locals, and sort of sat next to someone in izakaya and like make friends. So yeah, I definitely would recommend, if you have the ability to do so, having just even if it's Duolingo, and you get through like the I am an apple levels, it is worth having just a fraction, because and both experiences were amazing, but it really did make a difference for us in terms of what we were able to do during that trip.
I think so for me, I find you can get around somewhat easily just with a bit of pre-planning. So if that's like looking on Google Maps of where you're going to things, and then maybe saving a screenshot of your directions throughout the day, just in case you happen to lose your data, and you'll have those things listed out. But also just to kind of hand signals and like having polite face just really does help things. Just I always think of the term of like just having kind eyes, and just allowing yourself to just be open to knowing that you don't know what's going on, they don't know what you don't know, and other stuff. So I take this approach everywhere that I travel, is just have a kind face, and allow the situation to happen. You may not get exactly where you need to go, but you'll probably get in the right direction. In Japan, I do find that there's such a like patience about people there, that people who are maybe working in a shop may actually take you across the road to the place that you need to go. And it's like, don't you have a job to do? Like, you'd never have that here. But yeah, people will go above and beyond.
I was trying to get to so Shinjuku Station in Tokyo is one of the biggest stations. Like, it's huge.
Busiest in the world.
Couldn't even tell you how many train lines there are, but I know that there's at least sort of 3-4. I think it's 3-4 Japan Rail lines, and there's, oh god, who knows? Like, it's huge, and it's big enough that there's one side, and then you cross the road and there's a whole other side of the station. Like, that's how many trains go through it. And I had to meet someone at I think it was the southeast exit of one of these two buildings, and I'd been walking around it for half an hour, just desperately trying to find, like, I'd been in the station, I've been out, I've been walking around the edges, thinking possibly couldn't miss it, could not find this exit. So I'd gone up to a really lovely gentleman, no idea who he was, he had no idea who I was, and I, in Japanese, said, do you know where this exit is? I'm lost. And he walked me for 10 minutes around the edge to the other side, like all the way around, having a really polite, like, basic Japanese conversation with him. And it was just the sweetest thing. But yeah, like, I think it's knowing that then you're not trying to do anything to upset them, that you will make cultural mistakes, because, like, of course we all do, we all will. But if you go with, like you say, if you go with kind eyes and, with good intentions, and at least try and maybe look up a few etiquette things along the way. Like, one of the big things is not eating while walking on the street. Like, little things like that. And try where you can, and it'll all be good. So I've added a little bit of, I've gone into the HSL and added a little desaturation of aqua and blue in here as well, just because, again, there was a lot of the greys compared to the buildings, because they're so sort of like, the wood is very yellow. There's like this gorgeous sort of like warmth to them, and the grey sort of stones on the floor can be quite blue. If I just turn that back, you can kind of just see there's like little hints of blue in here. So I'm just lifting that out slightly. I don't want to go too far and mess up the kimono as well. So just take a little bit of that blue out.
This is global. This isn't on the mask anymore, right?
No, this is back in the global HSL color.
Of course, yeah, in the HSL, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And I find I do this a lot actually with anything that's got natural light in. I do like my images quite cold, but I just want to remove the real depths of the blue hue. So we're a bit closer to white, sort of like grayscale here because of the color that's been removed, but it's kind of tying in with the wood and sort of the gray of the floor, so that's fine here. And then I maybe want to lift just in the kimono here as well, so I might come in and just give a small lift to some of the shadows, bring out some of the depth in that wood as well. Not too much because I still want to be able to see the detailing in there. So yeah, so at this point I probably wouldn't do too much else to it. I'm really against cropping so early in an image because I think anything that I lose now, I can't get back later. So if I do take it into Photoshop and start working on it, that's going to be gone pretty instantly. So we'll just keep an eye. Well, actually, that's pretty decently on the rule of thirds. So yeah, probably won't do anything to that one. But yeah, like I'll just kind of have a quick look at where things are lining up. If you are someone that uses your work in a multitude of formats, so like if you are, using 16:9 and then 4:3 or 3:2, it is definitely worth keeping as much of that information as possible so you can use it in multiple formats. But yeah, other than that, I try not to crop till the very, very end, unless I have to.
If you were cropping, is it a case of you want to crop things out or you want to change your aspect ratio?
Normally I try and stick to the ratio that I've shot in, unless it just doesn't make sense for the image. I've shot in 3:2 most of my career, but then obviously switching to medium format more recently, things are in 3:4. So I don't know. Again, I don't know if it's been the same for you, but when you sort of switch, it takes you a little while for your eye to adjust to where that should be.
I actually found the opposite sort of happened where, again, I'd shot 3:2 for pretty much all of my cameras. And it was only when I took my GH5 to take some photos, which I never did. I only ever used that camera for video. But it happened to be when I was in Japan in the snow, and I was like, I can only carry one with me, and I was prioritizing video. So I was like, okay, I'll take this one camera. And then I wanted to get some photos. So I was like, okay, well, this is going to be my first time using the GH5 for photos. And that is a 4:3 sensor. I looked at my images afterwards. And I was like, this is actually pretty good for photography. And it took me a while to notice. And I was like, it's because the aspect ratio is different. And then from then onwards, if ever I came to choose a crop, I would find myself gravitating to wanting to do a 4:3. And when I do my prints as well, I do them as 40:30 as like the standard size. I must admit,
actively choose 4:3?
I actively choose 4:3, but I must admit I often forget. And so I'll go through and I'll batch edit a load of images and then I'll put them in my videos and then I'll notice they're all 3:2 and I'm like, you remember when you told yourself that you really like 4:3? So now this year I've made a conscious effort. I was like, I need to actually apply 4:3 as some sort of import preset. You'll still get that data afterwards. And if you use some newer cameras like the X-T5 in particular, you can choose 4:3 as a crop in the camera, but the raw file still has the full sensor 3:2.
Yes.
And I remember the Hasselblad as well. You can choose your crops, and some of the GFX cameras, you can even go down to like a 3:1. So you can have like a really narrow, and yet the raw file still retains all that information. But yeah, 4:3, I love it. So shooting with the Hasselblad, you've got it straight out of camera.
Absolutely. Actually, that's a really good point as well. I'm just trying to remember how to do it. I'm trying to remember which keys it is to press. You can actually create your own apply on import settings. And I can't remember which. Testing myself now, and I can't remember, but it's like an Alt or a Shift key you can press to
Oh, from
create
within
your
the
own.
develop. Ah.
Yeah, so it's definitely in develop.
Because I've got mine. I think I created presets. So there was a time when so I shoot with Fujifilm, and the film simulations wouldn't be applied based on the raw. It would, in fact, that might still be the case. It would just automatically convert to Adobe Standard. So I set up a preset just changing this film simulation, and then set that to apply on import. But if you go into your preferences, you can actually do it based on the camera type. And so you don't even have to choose it. You just plug in and it recognizes the camera down to the serial number.
Yes.
And you can say, for this camera, we will apply these presets. And for this camera with a different serial number, but the same model, you can do those. So I think it's on the second tab on the presets one. And then, yeah, your global one, you can apply a particular thing for all images, or you can override it based on a per camera basis with that checkbox just below. And it should recognize each of your cameras that you've got in your library.
Yeah. So I mean, I know how amazing people are in the chat box on the lives as well, but if anyone does happen to remember, it's been a while because I haven't had to change mine, but I know that you can basically hold down, it's like it's something like Alt and Shift or Command Shift, or although none of them are working for me, but it would come up and you could literally make changes. Or maybe it's because there's no changes there. Is it? Won't do it on this one. You can hold the buttons down. So if anyone knows and wants to tell us in the chat, or if not, I will look it up tomorrow and find out. Yeah. But you literally could hold down the Alt keys, and it would, instead of saying previous, it would say set default. Right. And so yeah, you could change them. You could change them in there as well. So it's going to annoy me now. I'll find that later.
Sorry, I feel like I keep distracting away from you editing.
It's no problem at all.
90-minute stream will turn into a 90-hour stream.
Talk about this all day. I probably don't want to listen to me for that long. So I'm just going to bring this through. There's actually not that much that I would probably do to this image in Photoshop, but I just wanted to show how easy it is to bring those images through and keep everything together. So if you bring things through and say edit in Photoshop, it will automatically stack your images together, so you don't have to export, take them out, do work on them, and then bring them back in to change them. They are intrinsically linked, she says, as computer goes. There we go. My computer's still in holiday mode. So there's a couple of things that stood out for me. There's a little bit down here on the floor. We've just got, it's just drawing my eye. So I'm just going to go over that with the healing tool. There we go, and get that one out pretty quickly. You could also use the clone tool there as well. That was drawing my eye as well, just sort of in the sort of negative space around Kahatsu. And then just that little plug on the wall there as well. In fact, I'm going to go in with my clone for that one. So I'm using the shortcut S, but it's this one over here. And then, because we've got pretty solid gradient on here that I can pull from, that's a nice quick fix over there. So I'm not doing huge amounts to this. It's literally just things that pull my eye from the image, that just sort of distract. There's really not that much I would do to Kahatsu from maybe that one hair there as well. So that one again, go in with my healing brush, because she's got pretty flawless skin. That's pretty much it. So yeah, that would probably be it on this one. I try not to change people's bodies too much. I like to honor who they are and how they show up as their best selves on the day. Plus, I mean, how fabulous does she look in Kimono anyway? So yeah, those few little bits that have drawn my eye. Once I'm done, again, nothing really destructive.
Oh, we've got a pause on the audio.
Are we back?
Yep, I think so.
Yeah,
Yeah,
perfect.
your
Yeah, I can
microphone's
see.
going in and out of processing. I don't know. Can it be like pulled in a little bit closer, maybe? Because it could be that it's not detecting as.
Is that better?
Yeah, that seems. Yeah.
Fabulous. In fact, let me tech issues. So let me just move my. I'm just going to move my I'm going to move my headphones into this socket. One sec.
Okie dokie. Whilst swapping that around, yeah, just noticing in the chat more questions on would you go around with a translator and other things. So Oliver's actually given a very good response, pretty much saying if you don't speak a common language, then yes, having a translator is definitely good, especially when it comes to work-related things. There's only so far you can get before you're not moving anywhere. So yeah, I would say in professional environments, when it comes to personal level, like going out trying to eat and other stuff, no, you don't need to have a translator with you. So yeah, you can get by. But I'd say in professional instances, it is worth looking into, because also you've got limited time somewhere, so making the most of it is valuable. Oh, we've got no audio. Okay, we got a full rummage around. Whilst we're having further rummaging of tech on Tig's side, I'm going to share one little tip on how it comes to choosing food and stuff, because that has improved in the years since I first went to Japan. When it comes to like knowing the ingredients of something, it helps to understand the logic behind how things are packaged, and some of that logic is cartoon characters. And so once you start to notice when you're looking at two different sandwiches and they're fully sealed and you're like, I don't know what's in this sandwich, recognize how they've packaged it. And if you've got characters of like, maybe there's an egg with arms and legs running around and a potato with arms and legs, and you know that this one's got egg in it, this one's got potato in it. Once you start noticing those little design cues, you start to understand things, and you can get around pretty easily. Tigz, we can't hear you, by the way. I don't know if you can hear us. No. Oh. Okay, I think we might have to come back in a moment. And we're back. Technical difficulties.
Crashed.
Doom zoom.
I did hear. I heard something about food and characters.
Yeah. Just filling in the gaps with how you can get by, choosing your sandwiches in a convenience store. So
Google Translate has a video, like a camera version as well. So if you do get really stuck, you can take it, you literally put it into video mode in the app, and it will give you. It can be hit or miss, but generally speaking, it's pretty good at telling you.
It's improved drastically. Like a few years back, it was hilarious how wrong some of the stuff was. Now that only happens a few times a day. So, you know, in some ways I miss the entertainment, but it means that I understand things more.
Absolutely. Things also, my husband bought some earphones. So they're basically like AirPods. They're from a brand called Time Kettle. And you put them in your ear, and it can listen to conversations and translate them with about a 2-second delay and tell you what someone is saying. They don't work very well in public spaces, but if you're having a one-to-one conversation, or want to have a chat with someone,
Wow.
you can have one each in each ear, and then you can speak, and then you put the phone in the middle, and it's got like a up and a down screen, so that you can,
Interesting.
one of you can speak, it translates into the other language, not just
Right.
Japanese, but they do
So you can travel like a diplomat in the UN and just and have all these like
However,
government style delays of conversation.
I will say though, is in Japanese they only do plain form, so they don't do polite Japanese, so you will be permanently speaking in slang.
Right, cool.
Fab. So let's save that one, and we'll bring in. I reckon we've probably. So my speaker's playing up again. Can you still hear me?
Yep. No, all good.
Oh, fab. So maybe we'll have a look at another one here. So this is one. We were looking at that guy in the shop earlier, walking away. So the first thing I'll probably do is see how much I can bring over from the image I edited before. So that's our raw file. So I'm going to highlight both using Command and then clicking on both images. And then I'm going to sync. So I've used the sync button down here. Treatment, basic profiles. Didn't actually put any lens corrections on there. We'll have a look at that in a minute. Pretty much everything. Okay, and then bring that over. So we'll see where that gets us in terms of this image, just to see if anything can be pulled over. Some of the blues coming through, but the white balance definitely needs to come up a touch here. So where that crossroads was, and I said that we were in sort of that pocket of yellow, this is of that in one of the darker areas, so a bit more shadowy down here. So I'm just going to lift that up a fraction. I don't want to go too, I kind of want to honor the fact that it was quite shadowy in this section, so don't want to come up too far. If I raise the exposure, we can see that it's starting to overexpose on the makeup. So I'm just going to come in and lift the shadows, and maybe the whites a little bit there as well, just so that I can lift that up slightly without doing sort of too much sort of damage up here. In fact, maybe even just bring the highlights down a fraction in there. Lens corrections, it'd be interesting to see if there is. There's a lot of vignetting on this image.
That was one thing I did notice actually with Hasselblad is vignette definitely happens significantly, but applying those corrections and then you're like, oh wow, this great image just turned out even better, just from applying a single check mark.
Yeah, I'm actually, I'll be honest, I'm a huge fan of a bit of vignette. Like it's one of the things I love, but maybe not quite that much on this one. So we'll bring that down to maybe 50%. So that's our before.
Yep.
And our after.
I think in portraiture and definitely in alleyways, I personally add a vignette a lot with like masks and things.
Yes. Yeah.
Something about it just sort of draws you in naturally. But when it comes to landscape, that was the first thing I removed. I was like, yep, solved it. Now the image looks significantly better.
Yeah, because I guess we'll probably be talking about this a lot tomorrow anyway, but if you've got the got a vignette, I guess it really closes off landscape, so you don't quite get that awe feeling of it being all expensive. My sound is being a nightmare today. I think I might have to give these a go. Please let me know if there's too much background noise. But yes,
no
the
worries.
kitty is unfortunately, I think, so yeah, let me know if you're having any issues hearing me. But
no,
yeah, so I've
still hear you.
Perfect. I've lightened up this image a little bit. I am going to crop this slightly because there's so much distracting on this far corner here. So this is somewhere where I would actually crop just beforehand.
probably only really needs to come into about there. And again, Kahatsu's standing on that rule of thirds, so I don't want to destroy too much of the right hand image and lose her positioning in this composition. So I'll crop that one in there. Maybe pop the contrast up just a fraction over here as well. See what it looks like. That I might try it on dehaze. Yeah, just a fraction of the dehaze. I love the dehaze one. Even on long landscapes, I tend to use the dehaze just a fraction on there as well.
Yeah. Do you find yourself having like a certain level that you would never really go past? Like for me,
Yeah.
I feel like I've created this arbitrary rule in my head. Is like never go above 15 or something on dehaze.
It's exactly 15 for me. Yeah.
Yeah. Because sometimes it does just start to push it too far. But there are places, like I remember in Hong Kong in particular, I was like, you know what? I'm going to have to push to 30 because there was that haze, that smog that, you know, that comes over from the mountains. You've got to go far on it.
I have it on the where are my snow monkeys? They're really like, some of them are quite misty because of obviously all the steam coming up out of the onsen. So sort of playing around with one of those, and that's 20. I think you can probably push it to around there, but you start losing that effect of it as well. So like I just want to sharpen it just a fraction. But the snow monkeys were amazing. That's a story for another day. But yeah, have you seen them on your travels?
Yeah, I've been 7 years ago or so. Yeah, it was I can't remember how I got there. Probably train. Been skiing around the area as well, which is an amazing place to go skiing.
Oh yeah, I again couldn't a snowboard, but I couldn't go this time because my wrist is just not in a state to do it. But if you're going past all these like ski resorts, they're just like, I really want to be on my board. Next time. So I brought this one again through into Photoshop, and so there are a couple of things in here that are really drawing my eye. So one of them is this light leak behind, so I'm going to try and fix that one, and then also there's this bit on the floor as well. Okay. So I'm going to zoom in here. See, I often find with the spot healing tool, it can do a really good job anyway. So I always sort of try with this and see, and actually, that's
did a brilliant job.
Pretty much done it straight off. If you are struggling with things like this in the background, the spot healing tool, you can obviously go in with a healing tool. Content aware fill is another great tool, but yeah, the spot healing one is literally doing the job today. We've got that little chunk on the floor there, which I am actually going to do with a clone tool because it'll throw off the pavement. So goes my OCD coming in there. And again, I'm doing this in smaller chunks because if I do too much at the same time, it just works out better when you're using the smaller chunks. But again, I am going to try this in one, and you can see it's not quite done it all. This bit here
it's done a marginally better job than I expected.
Better than I thought.
Yeah, it's the middle bit that's kind of gone a bit blurry, but the top and the tail of it did all right. Okay, now we'll find out.
So I'm going to go in. So this is where I'm going to use my my clone tool. So I'm going to pick. I'm picking from over here because I want it to have the same perspective values as this section. So picking right next to, and then I don't want it to look too obviously from one side or the other. So I'll pick little bits from each side and draw that in just to fix that one. That front section, I might use the patch tool. I'm I'm pressing the down key as well, so you can see, well, hopefully you can see if I zoom in a bit. We've got the marching ants that are on the image, but I usually find that if you come over by just a fraction, so that it's coming off the edge, it tends to work a little bit better.
That's a great tip.
So yeah, you don't end up having, like, sometimes it can drag and
you get that like upward flare type.
Yeah. So if you just pull your marching ants off, like you literally use the up and down arrows just to pull it across a little bit, that tends to do the job. So yeah.
Tim is actually mentioning in the chat, there is a perspective clone tool. However, it does require some setup.
Yes,
and
I believe it's up here. Perspective clone.
In the vanishing point?
Yeah. So you can set the perspective using the grid.
Yes.
And sort of set it out that way. And then, yeah, when you clone,
it will adjust the scale as well, right? I think.
It's been a while since I've been in here. I'm just reminding myself how this stamp tool. There we go. Tim, feel free to hop on and fill us in with the knowledge. But I remember this is how you set it up, and then you can clone within it. Oops, click a plane. Look at this, doing this on the go now.
Yeah, I'm going to be honest and say I've not used this tool, so this is a real shot in the dark.
Here we go. So you've clicked it in it, and then you can draw from outside.
I see. Yeah.
Really good for, like you say, like if you've got things like pavements or patterns or anything like that. I haven't used it in a really long time, mostly because, again, portraits. But yeah, that's a really handy one. I'm sure it'll be on a live somewhere.
Yeah, I'm just thinking maybe Tim can do a crash course on all different
I was about to say.
selection healing modes, if it's not been done already. That could be a great setup. Plenty of options there. Also, whenever I hear the term content aware fill, I always think of it as like, oh, this is my mate, content aware fill, like Philip. I don't know why. I always hear content aware fill as, you know, some sort of work party. Like, yep, that's Phil.
Yeah, and they're all completely content aware.
Yeah. It's the same with Phil Pasta. I always think of Phil Pasta as like Philip Pasta.
It must be fun living in your brain sometimes. So yeah, I think we're sort of coming towards the last couple of minutes. So I guess at this point, probably not worth me starting another photo. But if anyone has questions, it might be a good time to ask them.
Yeah, question just coming actually. Are these buildings people's houses? Like, does anyone live here?
A lot of them are actually in use. So when we were walking around, right, one of the things we were really conscious of was not stepping on people's property and getting in the way. A lot of them can look closed, but actually do have things going on, or they're open in the evenings. Actually, I mean, not in Kyoto, but on Christmas Day, I got invited to someone's home, which was a machiya, which is one of these, but in the Kanazawa district.
Nice.
And so ended up having a really lovely Christmas dinner of gyoza and ramen served around a table in one of these machiya. A lot of them have, people are favouring more modern buildings. So there are government schemes where they will give you grant funding to basically take one on and renovate it, which was what this particular machiya was in Kanazawa, and they're absolutely beautiful inside. I don't have camera photos, but I do have some Instagram. Like I shot some on my phone on Instagram, so if you have a look through my stories, you can see what the inside of one does look like. But yeah, especially in Gion, these would be very expensive properties. So
yeah, definitely. Yeah, interestingly, you mentioned about renovating. So Joe Keating, who we had on the stream 2 years ago now, I think, one of my friends who lives in Kyoto, has renovated a house, and it is beautiful, absolutely beautiful. And in that stream, he did share some images of things, because he's producing a book for himself. Or he may have actually finished it now, of the process of renovating this place in Kyoto. It's honestly gorgeous. His photography and stories of everything, just so good at finding light. I'm very jealous of the fact that he's been in Kyoto this whole time. So
yeah, I'm jealous. I don't even know him.
Interestingly as well, I recognize this particular area of Kyoto. Around the corner, there's a Leica store.
Yes.
And in that store, there's a great gallery, exhibition space, and again, all very traditional styled, and it's just a beautiful retail space that is quite unassuming from outside.
Yeah.
So great.
It's literally one of my favorite areas. Like, I love Tokyo, but Kyoto definitely has my heart.
Yeah.
What areas are you covering tomorrow?
So tomorrow, yeah, that's a good point. So tomorrow we will be doing a stream, video focused. So I'll be taking the reins tomorrow. And thinking of like this concept of travel around Japan, there's one area that I love about Japan. I'm very public about this. I love the trains. Trains in Japan, they are so special. So I'm going to piece together a bit of a sequence and what I look for in the perfect train shot, because I've got quite the library of train related video footage. Most of it is probably going to be Tokyo based, or at least Tokyo as a hub, and trains kind of spawning out from that. From this most recent trip, I spent most of the time in Tokyo, but I may dive into the archives and go back through some older stuff that will be in other areas of Japan as well. But yeah, Tokyo for me is just overwhelmingly my favorite city in the world, let alone Japan. It's so great. I love it there.
Oh, I can't wait. I'm so excited to see, because we've had a quick chat about what you wanted to show tomorrow, and I'm so excited to be geeking out on some trains with you tomorrow.
Yes, so that should be fun. So yeah, that's a good way to wrap this up. So Tigz, thanks for joining for this last 90 minutes. It's been great to chat about Japan and share some photos. For those of you who want to join tomorrow, we'll be live at the same time on Behance. So 12 midday UK time. You can work out your time zones no matter where you're watching from. If you happen to be watching from Japan, I believe that would be 9 p.m. Just to double check. Yep, that's correct. So 9 p.m. You can do the gradient scale in between, depending on where you are in the world. And we'll be going through some Premiere Pro video footage from Japan. And then a final day on Thursday, more Journey Through Japan. And of course, not only that, but we have more live streams. So just before, if you want to hop in early, Tim will be live tomorrow on Photoshop, and continuing on with his wonderful teaching and training. So crash course in Photoshop. And it has just escaped me what the topic is tomorrow. I'm going to try and remember. Sharpening, that was it. I knew we mentioned it a minute ago. I was thinking perspective. I was like, no, that was what we were saying we should do.
That's what we think you should do. Yeah.
Yeah. So sharpening tomorrow, all the different ways and methods of doing that. So if you want to join that, that would be 11 o'clock UK time on Behance. So that's everything for today. We will catch you tomorrow. Any final words or thoughts, Tigz?
No, thank you so much for having me. And if you are in Japan, domo arigatou gozaimasu.
All right. See you soon. Bye-bye. Matane.